6:44 in the morning. Midtown Manhattan. December. The kind of cold where you can see your breath the second you step outside. People are heading to work. Same routine. Same rush. Nobody's paying attention. And right in the middle of it, there's a man walking. Gray hoodie. Backpack. Calm. If you saw him, you wouldn't look twice. Because he doesn't look dangerous. He looks normal. But in less than 15 minutes, another man will be lying on the sidewalk. Shot. In broad daylight. And what happens after that? That's the part people still can't agree on. Because half the country calls him a killer. And the other half calls him something else. To understand this story, you can't just look at what happened. You have to understand why it happened. Because this isn't just about a shooting. It's about a moment where one life ends, and something much bigger gets exposed. Two men, two completely different lives, and one decision that turns into a national argument. Let's start with Brian Thompson, 50 years old, a husband, a father, the kind of guy who wakes up early, checks emails before coffee, stays on top of everything. He worked his way up through UnitedHealthcare and eventually became CEO. That means every decision he made affected not just a company, but millions of people. But that morning, he wasn't thinking about any of that. He was just walking toward a hotel, probably thinking about the day ahead. Meetings, presentations, the usual. What he didn't know was that those were the last few minutes of his life. And somewhere right now, there are people who still wish he walked back through the door. Now, Luigi Mangione. This is where the story starts to feel off. 26 years old, smart, educated, wealthy background, graduated from University of Pennsylvania with a degree in computer science. People who knew him described him the same way: quiet, thoughtful, curious, the kind of person you expect to build something, not destroy something. Nothing about his early life screams violence. Nothing obvious, which is exactly what makes this harder to understand. Around 2022, something changed. He started dealing with chronic back pain. Not temporary pain, the kind that stays, the kind that wears you down. He had surgery, but it didn't fix it. And if you've ever dealt with pain that doesn't go away, you know what it does. It changes how you think, how you feel, how you see the world. He starts moving around. Hawaii, Asia, traveling alone. And sometimes, people don't travel to find something new. They do it because they're trying to get away from something inside them. During that time, something else starts building. Frustration with the healthcare system, delays, denials. Those moments where someone on the other end decides what your pain is worth. And slowly, that frustration turns into something else. A belief, a justification. December 4th, 2024, 6:44 a.m. Brian Thompson steps out of a taxi outside the Hilton Midtown. Cold air, quiet street, just another morning. He starts walking toward the entrance. And then someone comes up behind him. Gray hoodie, face covered. He raises a handgun and fires. More than once. Brian collapses, right there on the sidewalk, in the middle of the city. And the shooter? He doesn't run. He walks, calm, like everything went exactly the way he planned. He heads toward Central Park and disappears. But he leaves something behind. Shell casings, with 3 words written on them: depose, delay, deny. If you've ever dealt with insurance in the US, those words hit differently, because they're not random. They're a message. The investigation moves fast. Surveillance footage, movement tracking, a fake name at a hostel. Mark Rosario, fake ID, carefully planned movements, a bus ticket, a train ride, Philadelphia, then nothing, for 5 days, until a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A customer walks in, sits down, orders food, looks completely normal. An employee looks at him, then looks at their phone. News coverage, the face, back to him again. And in that moment, everything clicks. Police show up. They ask him if he's been to New York. He hesitates. His hands shake. He gives a fake name, but it's already over. In his backpack, A handgun, a suppressor, ammunition, fake IDs, and a red notebook. Inside that notebook, not just plans, but thoughts, beliefs, reasons. One line investigators focused on that the company had not held up its end of the bargain. And I keep thinking about that moment, sitting in a McDonald's, knowing the entire country is looking for you. What does that feel like? Fear? Relief? Or just waiting for it to end? From a legal standpoint, the case looks strong. The weapon matches. DNA matches. Surveillance lines up. The notebook ties everything together. But then, something happens that no one expected. The public reaction. Normally, a case like this is simple. Outrage. Condemnation. No debate. But this time, it splits. Some people say, "He's a murderer," and they're right. But others see something different. They call him a symbol. Some even call him a hero. And that's where the story becomes uncomfortable. Because Brian Thompson was a real person. He had a family, people who loved him, people who lost him. That doesn't change. But at the same time, there are people across the country who have felt ignored, denied, pushed aside by a system they couldn't fight. And when those two realities collide, you don't get a simple reaction. You get this. Legally, the case is still unfolding. Multiple charges, federal and state. The death penalty was considered, then later taken off the table. Trials are scheduled. His legal team is fighting hard, trying to suppress evidence from the arrest. And through all of it, Luigi Mangione has said very little. This is the part that stays with you, because Luigi, in his own writing, didn't describe this as personal. He described it as a message, a statement, and the uncomfortable question is, what happens when people actually hear that message? After the shooting, conversations started changing. Politicians spoke more openly about healthcare. Journalists dug deeper into claim denials. Executives increased personal security. So you have to ask, did one act of violence force a conversation that had been avoided for years? And if it did, what does that say about everything else? Because maybe the most disturbing part of this story isn't just the crime. It's the reaction to it. When people start seeing something like this and feel conflicted instead of shocked, that's not just about one person. That's about a system that people feel has failed them. And when people stop believing the system works, that's when things start to break. 2 lives. One is gone. One is waiting for a verdict. One family is grieving. An entire country is arguing. And somewhere in the middle, there's a question that still doesn't have a clear answer. Does this change anything? Or does it just become another headline people move on from? I'm not asking you to pick a side, because this isn't that simple. I just want to know, how do you see it? Let me know in the comments. I read more of them than you think. And if you're new here, this is what we do. Real stories, told in a way that actually makes you feel them. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.